Shalom Chaverim, today Parashat Tisa, and we're going to do it together with Rabbi Yehuda Levi and the Kuzari. All right, so as a kid growing up, I heard many times the folk tale. It was always in different versions, but it was always kind of the same. So there was a kingdom, there was a king, and the king had a problem, didn't know what to do, and he summoned the best of the people in the kingdom, and one after another they failed to help the king and solve his problem, and eventually it was that small frail Jew that came and saved the day, and it was, very tiny, very thin, but very clever. And funny enough, when I first read the Kuzari, which is really one of the most important books in Jewish thought, I thought it was really funny because it kind of started the same. But before I'm going to tell you how it starts, the Kuzari was completed around the year 1140 CE, so we're talking medieval Spain, written by Rabbi Yehuda Levi, who was also a poet and a philosopher and a physician. And the book really starts with the king of Kuzars, and it's supposedly, even though it was written in 1140, it's about a period somewhere in the 8th century when an Asian tribe called the Kuzars converted to Judaism. And Rabbi Yehuda Levi kind of explained what led to this conversion by telling the king's story. So it begins with the Kuzari, the kings of Kuzar, who really tries tirelessly to adhere to all the rules of worship of his culture, and he's being very diligent. But no matter what he does, he has this recurring dream. And in his dream, there's an angel that comes to him and tells him, כוונתך רצויה אצל הבורא, אבל מעשך איננו רצוי. Meaning, your intention is very pleasing for the creator, but not your way of acting. And this dream happens again and again, and the Kuzari is saying, but what is the right way of acting? Okay, I have good intentions, but what am I doing wrong? So to solve his problem, he summons all the best people, all the wise people around him. And first he calls a philosopher. And he consults a philosopher, and the philosopher gives him an explanation that is, by the way, very much in par with the fashion of the time, of medieval times philosophy of basically, was the world created or always existed? So the philosopher's claim is that the creator is perfect, and when something is perfect, it doesn't seek to change. So it cannot be that the world was created because perfection cannot wish to create. Therefore, the world always existed. Now, this is not satisfactory for the Kuzari because what he wants to know, but what is the right way of acting? What philosophy should I go about in my life, in my daily life? So he calls a Christian and a Muslim, a wise Christian and a wise Muslim, to basically tell him about their way of acting, their way of worshiping, tell him about their religion so he can decide whether this is the right way of acting. Which, by the way, at the same breath, when he summons them, it is written that he was not to call a Jew because the Jews are the dat mushpelet or shfela, meaning they are of low station and they are despised by all. So he hears the Christian and he hears the Muslim, and this is not satisfactory for him, and so reluctantly he calls the Jew. And so this entire book, the Kuzari, is basically made of 5 essays in which the Jew, which is called in the Hebrew translation, the Chaver, basically defends Judaism and answers all of the challenges that the Kuzari has about the Jewish faith, the Jewish religion, eventually leading him to his conversion and for his entire people to convert. By the way, today historians and researchers still debate if that event actually happened of the Kuzar's conversion to Judaism, but that's another story. How is this connected to our parasha? One of the big challenges that the Kuzari posed to the Chaver, to the Jew, is the whole ordeal of the golden calf, which exists in our Torah portion. So for those who want a refresher, after the revelation in Mount Sinai, the dramatic event of being given the Torah with smoke and fire, Moses disappears into the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. The Israelites at the bottom wait. They start to worry. Then they come to his brother Aaron and ask Aaron, help us create a golden calf so we can worship. And Aaron tells them, go bring me your gold. He melts their gold and they create the golden calf. When Moses comes down from the mountain, he sees the Israelites dancing around the golden calf and he breaks the tablet. So the Kuzari here, one of the challenges to the Chaver is, look, but you say your people are so great, but they sinned, the biggest sin of all. They created a golden calf instead of worshiping God. What do you have to say to that? So, and I actually want to read from the Kuzari itself, where it says, אמר הכוזרי, the king of the Kuzar says, היזהר החבר שלא תיטה בסיפור שבחי עמך ותעזוב מה שמתפרסם ושנודע ממרים ממלא המעמדות. Be careful that you're so indulgent in saying how much your people are superior, because I know about the rebellion of God, which was probably the biggest rebellion out of all rebellions. כי שמעתי שבתוך זה עשו עגל ועבדו מבלתי האלוהים. Because I heard about the golden calf, okay? So that's what the Kuzari is actually saying. And so then the Chaver, the Jew, has a defense. So first he tells the Kuzari, look, even great people sin. You are great, right? You can sin. Great people sin, so there's no denying that. But I want you to remember that the Torah states that the Israelites are a chosen nation. And even after the sin, the Torah states that they are chosen. And you cannot argue with that. But then he goes to really bring more poignant arguments in defense of the Israelites. So the first argument that he brings was that the Israelites never meant to worship any other God but Adonai. And that in fact, God, Adonai, was revealed to them in physical manifestations. So basically, what is it, the whole, pillar of fire and pillar of smoke that they were following in the desert? Isn't that a physical manifestation to worship? And in fact, when they were waiting for Moses to come down from the mountains, they were waiting for tablets. They were waiting for an ark. They were waiting for physical objects to worship. And because they thought Moses would never come, they said, okay, we need to worship God. We need to worship Adonai. So we will make our own object because he is not coming. So the intention was always to worship God and no other God. Okay, so that was the first argument. The second argument that he brings is that out of 600,000 people, which was the Israelites' camp, only 3,000 of them actually engaged in the work of making the golden calf and the worship of it. 3,000 out of 600,000. And he says that even those 3,000s were tricked. They were tricked by Aaron. So basically, the Chaver explains to the king of Kuzar that Aaron tricked those people in order to expose them. So basically, Aaron said, okay, bring me your gold and I will melt them to make golden calf, because he wanted to see who are the ones who are not loyal, who are the ones that are sinners. So the Chaver says only 3,000 out of 600,000, and even them were tricked. And the third argument that he brings is perhaps the most profound. And that argument is that, after all, there is no worship on planet Earth that is imageless. Meaning, even the people who only believe in one God, in Adonai, the abstract God that is everywhere, still assign to that God physical traits. What does it mean when you say God is vengeful or God is merciful? You assign God human traits. What does it mean to say God sits in heaven? Does God have a body? Does he really live somewhere in heaven? The human mind cannot truly worship anything without image, because that's just how we think. So I must say that at this point, if I was the Kuzari, if I was the king of Kuzars, I would convert to Judaism then and there, just because of, I want to learn this art of argument, right? I mean, you guys argue really, really well. But finally, the Chaver, the Jew, admits that the only fault of the Israelites was that they decided how to worship instead of waiting for instructions. Meaning that they should have waited for the tablets and the ark and the actual instructions of worship instead of deciding how they would worship, let's say with a golden calf. And he compares it to a patient that takes medicine without consulting his physician or pharmacist, right? So yes, you know that you need to take medicine to get well, but without the proper instructions, you can only make yourself more sick. And so that's his comparison. And this defense of the Israelites is obviously very known, and it was adopted by many Torah commentators, and it's still referred to today when speaking of the golden calf. But speaking of commentators, I wanted to share with you probably my favorite defense of the Israelites that I have read, and it comes from Nechama Leibovich. In her book Iyunim Chadashim Besefer Shmot, or New Studies in the Book of Shmot. And here she has really a beautiful defense for the Israelites. And she says, כי לא השמיעה החד פעמית היא ההופכת אדם ומשנה אותו מן ההפך אל ההפך. ואף לא שמיעה מפי הגבורה תשנהו בבת אחת מעובד העגלים לעובד אדוני. כי אם תרגול ממושך בחיי תורה ומצוות, בהדרכתה המתמדת של תורת אדוני, המקיפה אותו מכל צד, המסדירה את יומו ואת לילו, את חולו ואת מועדו, את חייו בבית ואת חייו בחוץ. So beautiful. So basically what Leibovich is saying here is that one-time hearing cannot change a person from one end to another. For it is not one-time hearing that transforms a person and changes them from one extreme to the other, nor does hearing it from the mouth of a hero can change them all at once, from a worshiper of calves to a worshiper of God, but rather prolonged practice in a life of Torah and commandments with constant guidance of the Torah of God, which surrounds them on every side, regulating their days and night, their in sickness and feast, throughout life at home and outside. So what Nechama Leibovich here is saying, she answers all those who asked, how could the Israelites, after the big revelation in Mount Sinai, after seeing revealed and exposed miracles, could then worship a golden calf? And she says, well, a one-time event, no matter how big and how fantastic, can change a person from one end to another. And that it is a lifetime of persistence and of work that is required to make someone a believer. And I think that this defense is so profound, not just for what it is, but also in a way she kind of solved the Kuzari's dream. She kind of answered the Kuzari's question, who is asking, what is the right way of acting? And so living as an authentic and free ethical human being does not happen after someone, reads an article in a newspaper or hear a speech from a politician, no matter how charismatic the politician may be. It takes much more than a dramatic moment of revelation to become a true believer. It is daily, persistent practice of ethical law, which over time leads us to the right way of acting. Shabbat Shalom.